Almost everyone that had an original Atari missed out on a really cool console before they got their NES. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today I take a look at what you were missing if you never got a ColecoVision.
Second Opinion Games.
The first game I want to talk about is a horizontal shooter called Antarctic Adventure. Now, that's very similar to a game called Scramble. You have a main gun which fires straight forward, and bombs to drop on ground targets. However, where it differs from Scramble is you don't run out of fuel like that game does, so you could pretty much fly and just try and dodge your way through the map. But it's not going to be easy because everything is trying to kill you, and chances are you're not going to last long. This was decent for its time, and it's probably one you definitely missed. Next up, we have Tarzan. This one is pretty notable for having multiple screens and for punching giant monkeys in the face. Now, your main goal here is to save the good monkeys, but it's not going to be easy because there's an evil hunter that tries to hunt you. And yeah, he's going to freaking shoot you and kill you dead. There's also traps that you have to avoid that can be freaking anywhere, so you have to learn every level in the map in order to avoid these. If you happen to, well then you could even trick some of the big monkeys to fall in the traps. You also have to avoid alligators and swing on vines in order to save more monkeys, and continuously move from left to right to do so. This was a very early platformer, and the graphics look quite good to this day, especially for this very aged console. Jumping back into the shooters, we have Meteoric Shower, I guess that's how you say the name. This is sort of a twist on Galaga because you could shoot either up or down, and you try to stay in the middle of the map while shooting all of the aliens that are trying to shoot you. It's kind of interesting, and if this is the style of game that you love, it's certainly one you have to try. But for most people, they just stayed away from it or never even knew it existed. But this was a very experimental time for shooters, as you can see here. But even more experimental is the game called Looping. Now you fly in a horizontal shooter from left to right, but this time you have full-on flight controls. Pushing down to go up and pushing up to go down is very confusing with this style, and also you have to try and make loops to avoid different enemies on the screen and also shoot them down. This is extremely difficult to retrain your brain into flying different from how you have your entire life. And this is one I can never really get the hang of, so I just passed it aside just like everyone else. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, you would be hard-pressed to find someone that didn't know about James Bond in the good old 007 video game. This is kind of like Moon Patrol with a hint of Diamonds Are Forever mixed in. There's a satellite trying to shoot you from space, and you have to try and shoot that down. Also, your car transforms into a boat, so you could dive into water and also shoot down scuba divers. However, you're going to be shot at from all directions, so even though you're far more controllable in this car than you are in the game Moon Patrol, it ends up being even more difficult than that game. Again, I can never really get the hang of it, but if you do, this is a great game. The game Frontline seems like a really basic version of Commando. One button is to aim your gun going clockwise around in a circle, and the other one is to fire your gun. You have to shoot down people, and eventually you'll even come to tanks. Now, moving here is very deliberate, so trying to avoid getting shot yourself is rather difficult. If you can make it all the way to the end of the stage, then you are a better man than me, because these stages are freaking huge. Every once in a while you come to a tank that looks like you can get into, and maybe you can if you hit the right buttons, but I can never really figure it out because I got this game without an instruction manual, but it is still a lot of fun to play, and I really like this style of gameplay overall. So before we dive too deep into Coleco's library, I think we should look at some other ports that were also more notable on other systems. How about Spy Hunter? In here you have the Peter Gunn theme, of course, and everything that makes Spy Hunter, except for the gear shift. You could only push up to speed up and push down to speed down, but you still have your machine guns and your smoke screen and everything else, like your oil pads. You could even transform into a boat if you happen to stay on the road long enough, and you don't hit that darn bridge that seems to be out, giving you an instant death. There's also the snow scenes here, which definitely changes the controls of your Spy Hunter car. And there's even those evil guys with the spiked tires trying to ram you off the road. However, this does seem to be easier than most Spy Hunter games, and I really like the scrolling effects even if it is a bit choppy. This was done pretty darn good on the Coleco. Time Pilot by Konami was also done fairly well, other than the overall sound effects sounding like trash, and the music just isn't here whatsoever. But it's still pretty good at shooting down helicopters and biplanes and fighter jets that are trying to take you out. And they even have the boss battles here, even if all of them are ridiculously easy. After you play through, you loop back to the beginning, only now everything runs a bit faster. Also, trying to save those parachute guys is definitely fun, and this is a very capable version of Time Pilot that's still worth playing today. Okay, jumping back into those games that you missed, take a look at Jumpman Jr. This was one of the first action platformers, and it's like a one-screen puzzle where you're getting shot at from all directions, trying to pick up these coin MacGuffins which will set off traps, or maybe even start fires on the screen, allows you to really choose how you work your way through the missions. You could also climb chains, and go up and down the ladders, and even fall to your death, and try and pick up a couple of coins along the way. Even dying can be very strategic in this game. However, most of the time, it's not going to be on your own terms, and trying to figure out how to collect coins while dying is something that only the masters can perfect. So just try to stay alive as you play this great action platformer. Artillery Duel also looks like a game that's still being played on tablets to this day. Heck, my kids play a game almost exactly like it, which then they charged $100 to my credit card just to unlock different freaking characters. Yeah, this is one of those games where you have to adjust the angle and how much gunpowder you put in for the strength and fire at each other back and forth. Eventually, it gets really intense as you inch towards each other's artillery, and then you eventually blow it up. And then little army guys come out and celebrate just to rub it in your enemies' faces. This is one of the best two-player games and definitely caused a lot of fights from big brothers around the world. BC Quest is also something that you might see on tablets to this very day. It's one of those continuous runners where you just have to control whether or not you jump over an obstacle or duck under an obstacle, in which case there are tree branches to duck under or anything that might be on the road to jump over. And it's quite challenging and gets really fast. If you happen to be really good at it, you can make it to this turtle shell scene where there's this woman that's just one of the ugliest video game women I think I ever seen, and she tells you to jump, sucker, and I think I'd rather die than maybe save this evil witch. So then I'll jump over to BC Quest 2. In this sequel, they dramatically changed up the way the game's played. You're still on a crude unicycle, and if you run into anything, you will fall off and die. Other than rocks, of course, which you will pick up and use as currency along the way. There are caves that you can move through and pick up tons of rocks there, and maybe even pay to cross a toll bridge, or you could just try to go around the mountain itself in a sort of pseudo 3D space. This was extremely interesting and definitely way ahead of its time, and that's why it's one of my favorite games on the system. But if you want to get into one of the cooler games, I recommend you try Antarctic Adventure, where you are a penguin trying to race through the different levels. There's only so much time here. Fish will jump out of holes and you have to try and eat them for extra points, and also avoid the seals as well as the traps themselves. Now, this penguin can run really, really fast, and you're going to be encouraged to do so if you want to start clearing clearing levels. However, the faster you run, the harder it is to avoid obstacles, and it's also really hard to collect those fish. This is really, really cool, and I mean it up and down, and it's definitely a lot of fun and has a ton of personality to it. But if you want something that's super fun to play, well, I recommend you try out Oil's Wells. Now, this is a highly addictive action puzzle game where you try to dig down deep into the ground to collect all the oil. Now, you only have so much time pressure meter thing up at the top of the screen. I'm really not sure what to call that. And you also can't let any of the enemies touch your oil line itself. However, you can kill the enemies with the head of your oil line thing. There's also these other things that you can't touch with the head of your oil line thing, and you can let them pass through your main body. So learning which ones are good and which ones are bad are very important. And this is really, really tough. Trying to make it to that ultimate bomb thing at the bottom, which will slow down time and let you pick up tons of oil really fast and might give you the advantage to make it to the next level, is crucial. And this is definitely a game that has lots of risk versus reward. It might not look like much in the graphics, but as far as gameplay goes, this is definitely one of the best games on the ColecoVision, and is definitely one that almost everyone missed out on. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I had a great time making it. And yes, the ColecoVision also played Atari 2600 games, which was amazing if you had that module to do so, which I definitely did back in the day. And I probably spent a lot more time playing the Atari games than I did the Coleco ones. So coming up in the very near future, I am going to show you the games that appeared on both systems and show them off head to head. So hopefully you guys really start diving deep into the ColecoVision library to find just the best games. And now I want to know what your favorite games are on the ColecoVision. Did I talk about them today? Probably not, because most of the games I showed off were just sort of interesting Coleco games and not the best that the console had to offer. Most of them will definitely be coming up in the future, so make sure you let me know. So until later, I will see you again, guys.